Welcome to Mysteries of Superstition Mountain. I'm Larry Hedrick, where we bring the past into the present for our future viewers. Today we have another great story by Hank Scheffer.
It's amazing to me how stories seem to take place about the Superstition Mountain, where they'll all happen at one time over here, and then 2 years later, somebody will start that same bunch of stories all over again. And right now, one of those topics is gold bars and gold bullion in caves in the Superstition Mountains. There's supposed to be tons and tons and tons of gold bars hidden in caves somewhere in the Superstition Mountains. And according to all these different stories that people have been telling, and I'm not going to get into all those right now, because I have a story about a fellow I want to tell you about anyway. But at any rate, that is one of the topics that keeps popping up. And right now, it seems to be the big topic of the day. Well, the story I'm going to tell you is about a fellow by the name of Charlie Williams. And it took place back in 1935. Now, Charlie Williams was a fellow who had a propensity for drinking. And apparently there were times when he'd get in his cups that people really didn't like him at the Apache Junction Inn because somehow he'd managed to forget to pay his bill. Or he would pass out and he didn't pay his bill, or he'd just disappear and didn't pay his bill. But at any rate, the Apache Junction Inn was a place where all of the prospectors and everybody gathered from time to time, and they'd tell their stories. And of course, this was probably another one of the go-rounds for the gold bars or gold ore that was found in caves. And they were talking about that, and Charlie said that he knew where there was one. And this was January 2nd of 1935. Now, whether Charlie had come up with the idea that maybe his New Year's resolution was he was going to be rich instead of poor, he was going to go find all this gold, I don't know, but maybe he did. So off he went. He disappeared, and he went into the Superstition Mountains. And he went back in there, and there was news in the papers, Charlie's up on the mountain, he's looking for gold. Well, a couple days, 4 days passed, and they didn't hear anything from Charlie. There's no Charlie, no nothing. And it was in the papers that Charlie had disappeared searching for gold in the Superstition Mountains. So here we go again. Now Charlie, as it turns out, came back in another 4 days. He was back by January 8th. And the newspapers went wild again. Charlie's back, and on and on and on. Well, what had happened was Charlie was out there, and he found this cave. And he found that there was cool air that was blowing out of that hole. So he crawled down in there and got into this open area. He was reaching around on the ground, and he found all these rocks and stones. And it turns out it was gold ore. It was rich gold ore. There were nuggets down there as big as walnuts, the story said. So he put some of those in his pocket, and he got as many of them in his pocket as he could get. And he started crawling back out that cave, and he got out of the cave, and he turned around, and he looked to make sure he knew where he was, and he bumped his head, and he knocked himself out. Well, he come to a couple days later, and he managed to wander around until he got back into Apache Junction, back in the area where he'd gone in out around Goldfield. Well, everybody was happy to see Charlie, and he reached in his pockets and he showed them he had all this gold. And here we go again. I said, well, where'd you get it? He said, I don't know, I bumped my head and forgot. So you forgot, okay. Well, now they're finding out that this gold that he has is pretty good stuff. They had it assayed, but come to find out the gold that he had in his pockets was dentist's gold, of all things. It was dentist-grade gold that he had in his pockets. And Uncle Sam wasn't happy at that time that he had this much gold. Well, now they're going to find this guy. Poor old Charlie doesn't have a pot to pee in, as they say. And they're going to fine him $5,000 for having too much gold. But the government, in their infinite wisdom, they decided to strike a deal. So they kept the gold to take place of that $5,000 fine. These guys are just too much. They're wonderful. You got to go with that. So in the meantime, now poor Charlie, who was so happy he found all this gold, the government now has it, but they told him that the gold he found was dentist gold. Well, we didn't hear much more about Charlie after that. But it makes me wonder, I have to ponder the couple questions here. The first one was, who called Uncle Sam and told him that Charlie had all this gold to start with? The government doesn't even know where Apache Junction is, let alone about the gold or who Charlie Williams is. And the second thing is, who takes $5,000 worth of dentist gold and puts it in a hole in the ground up on the Superstition Mountains? Well, I'm not real sure I know. And I can tell you what I do know, though. I do know that Charlie kind of disappeared into obscurity. With that kind of story to tell, I think I would too. And whether that gold was really dentist gold, or whether it was the real deal, or it was gold bullion, or any of that other who struck John, we can only chalk that up to being one more mystery of the Superstition Mountains. Thank you for watching this episode of Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.